Hey everybody, my name is Michelle and in this video I'm going to talk about some historical fiction books that I really need to read. So for those of you who don't know me yet, historical fiction is one of my all-time favorite book genres. I love it so much. I love history so much. I actually have a bachelor's degree in history, so you can say that it's definitely something that I'm very passionate about. Lots of my favorite books are historical fiction books and I actually have a couple of videos with recommendations on that. Those are a bit older, at least one of them, so I will leave links to them down below in the description box if you want to watch them, but they are a bit older, so yeah, you know, it's always weird for me to watch older videos, but maybe it's still useful to you. Anyway, historical fiction, I love it so much, but I've been noticing lately that I haven't read it as much as I used to do, even though I have so many amazing historical fiction books on my TBR right now that I really need to read and that I really want to read. So I thought it would be fun to make this video all about some historical fiction books that are currently on my TBR that I just really want to read in order to get myself excited and to pick these books up and to actually read them and not just leave them on my shelves for ages. And maybe they can also be a bit of, well, not really book recommendations because of course I have not read them yet, so I cannot give an opinion of whether they are good or not. But maybe it will be interesting for you guys to see some of these titles as well, and maybe you feel excited to read them as well, who knows. In any case, I am just going to talk about 6 books that are currently on my TBR that are historical fiction that I'm very excited about. And I guess I should just get started with that, so yeah, that is what I'm going to do. The first book on this list is The Book of Lost Friends by Lisa Wingate. Lisa Wingate is also the author of Before We Were Yours, which is a book that I have read and that I enjoyed very much. I can very much recommend it. But this is one of her newer releases and it takes place along 2 different points in time. So the first one is 1875 and it is after the Civil War during the Reconstruction in the United States, which was of course a very dangerous time, and it follows 3 young women who are making a very dangerous journey across the country. All 3 have different reasons to do so, but they are together trying to survive, trying to make it, and trying to get where they need to be, and I'm assuming there's a lot more to it. And then the second timeline takes place in 1987 and it follows a young teacher named Benedetta. She arrives in a small port town in Louisiana for a new teaching job and she's very much stricken by how bad the circumstances are and how much poverty there is. And then by chance she comes across the story of the 3 women that I previously mentioned. So I'm guessing these storylines will connect somewhere, like I don't know how, but with the previous book, Before We Were Yours, it was also the case of that there were 2 timelines that were connected, even though you don't find out how until later. So yeah, guessing it will be the same for this one, and this one I'm just so excited about, mostly because I love the other book so much, and I just think Lisa Wingate is a very gifted author. And I do really have a thing for historical fiction where there are 2 timelines, and what I especially like is that this book doesn't have a past and a present, but 2 points of time that are in the past, because of course 1987 is also a bit more in the past, like not as much as 1875, but still. So I'm very curious to see how this book is going to be. I'm just assuming it will be very much like Before We Were Yours, and I hope so because I enjoyed that book so much. And it is a book that has been on my bookshelves for ages, so I think it will be about time for me to finally pick it up and actually read it. The next book is Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. This is also a book that has been on my shelves for quite some time, and it's actually quite a shame that I have not read it yet because this book follows the life of Thomas Cromwell. Thomas Cromwell was someone who had a very interesting life because he was low-born, but somehow he managed to become the most powerful man at the court of King Henry VIII of England. Of course, there's much more that happens in between, and actually he is one of my subjects of my bachelor thesis that I've written. So I do know quite a bit about Thomas Cromwell, and his life was very interesting, and it's just baffling how he managed to get such a position at court. He was also quite active within the Reformation, in the breaking with the Church of Rome and the founding of the Church of England. Tudor history is my favorite era of history that I like to study. That's also why I basically specialized in it, and that is why I just don't understand that I still have not read this book yet. Especially because it's the first book in a series. There's also a second and a third book who follow other, well, not characters, other people during that time. I believe the second book is about Anne Boleyn, but I don't know who the third book is about. I don't know if it's Thomas Cromwell again. So basically I claim to be a lover of history, but I'm actually quite bad with historical fiction books and knowing what is out there apparently, but still. I know I will love Wolf Hall because I just know that I love this piece of history and this subject so much. And it will be interesting to read a fictionalized book about a real historical person that I actually know quite a bit about. So I'm just so excited about that. And that is why this book definitely belongs on this list, because it is a very high priority read right now when it comes to historical fiction, and I want to make an effort to read it really soon. The next book on this list sort of is in the same historical fiction category, and that is Dissolution by S.J. Sampson. So this one takes place in Tudor England again, during the reign of King Henry VIII again. And it actually takes place during the period of the dissolution of the monasteries, which was when the Church of England was founded. It was very much against all Catholic practices, including churches and things with lots of like beautiful things in it. So they were destroyed and taken away because it wasn't good, but mostly it was because King Henry VIII really wanted all that money for himself. Actually, Thomas Cromwell played a very, very big part in this, and it's just, yeah, it is, King Henry VIII in general is just very interesting as well, who started his own church basically because he wanted a divorce and he didn't get his way, so he just wasn't really used to not getting his way, so he started like his entire own church, whatever. Dissolution actually follows a character named Matthew Shortlake, and he's a lawyer and sort of detective. And he is called in to, investigate the murder of somebody who works for Thomas Cromwell. This book series, because it's the first book in a book series, has been recommended to me so many times, especially because I often mention how much I love Tudor history. Again, same thing as with Wolf Hall, I just don't understand why I still have not read it yet. Because this book sounds like it's just something I will love so much. Again, I don't think I have to repeat myself, but it's just my favorite piece of history, and I do like to read something that is sort of like a little bit different, like Tudor era, but it's also a murder mystery. Just count me in for that, that's going to be amazing. And that is why it's also one that is very much needed on this list of historical fiction books that I just need to read. Next up, I have Every Man Dies Alone by Hans Fallada. This is a book that takes place during World War II, and it follows a husband and wife who live in Berlin, who are part of the resistance and who do everything in their power to stand against the Nazis. It is based on a true story, which is something that I very much enjoy in historical fiction, especially when it comes to World War II stories. According to the premise, it is both an exciting thriller and a moving romance, so I'm expecting a lot from it. What I also like is that this is a book that I just haven't heard much about. I don't think I have heard anybody talk about it. To be honest, I actually also don't know how I came across this book anymore, because I've had it for I think 2 years now. And I just honestly don't remember where I got this title and how I came to buy it, which is weird. Maybe I should look back through my book hauls and maybe I will explain it in there, and then I can solve that little mystery on my own. But anyway, as I said, World War II stories are always something that I enjoy when it comes to historical fiction books, mostly because I think it is very important to remember these kinds of stories, especially when they are based on true events, and it's just, I think it's very important to see what happened there and the brave people who actually stood up against it. And what I also again like about it is that I just don't know what to expect from this book. I don't know anything about the writing style, about the author or whatever. Like, I just don't know anything about it, which is something that I enjoy very much. I like to go into books a little bit blindly sometimes. In any case, my hopes for this one are very high, and I think it will probably be an emotional one as well. The next book is Beneath a Scarlet Sky by Mark Sullivan, which is again a historical fiction book that is about World War II. And it is again based on a true story. That is often the case when it comes to World War II books. This one is about an Italian teenager named Pino Lella, who wanted nothing to do with the war and Nazis, but when it starts, he doesn't have much of a choice. He eventually joins the resistance and he helps Jews escape from the country. But after a while, his parents force him to to enlist in the Nazi army in order to protect him, and somehow he ends up becoming the personal driver of a very important Nazi officer. So that is one that sounds very, very exciting and very eventful. Even though this is another World War II book based on a true story about somebody who was very active in the resistance, it still sounds so different than Every Man Dies Alone. What I like is that it takes place, or at least that it's from the perspective of somebody who is Italian, which I think is going to be a very interesting perspective, especially when it comes to the role of Italy within World War II and everything that happens. I can't say that I've ever read a book about World War II from an Italian perspective before, so that will be something new. And when it comes to historical fiction, I am always looking for something new, some perspective that is a little bit different, a story that is a little bit different. I don't know, I mean every story is different of course, but that is what usually gets my attention. And this book, it sounds beautiful, it sounds amazing. Again, a lot of the same things as I mentioned with Every Man Dies Alone, but I can just never get enough of World War II historical fiction. And I cannot wait to see what this book is going to deliver and how it's going to be. And then the final book on this list is The Crimson Petal and the White by Michael Faber. This book takes place in Victorian England in London, and it's about a prostitute named Sugar, a young woman who tries everything she can to get out of her position. That's all I know, and I know that's not much of a premise. I mean, for me it's enough of a premise. I usually don't need that much to be intrigued with a book. For me, this sounds again like something that I just have not read before, and that is why I really want to read it. I do love stories about a woman who's trying to get somewhere, a woman who has probably been in very difficult positions and who wants to get out of that. And I'm just all here for that, and I cannot wait. And also, like, this book is bigger and heavier than you think it would be, and like the font is so small, so I think it's going to be quite a long story. And because of that, I'm suspecting that there's so much more to it, and it's just going to be about her life and everything that she has to do. And I'm expecting this book to really, well, not surprise me maybe, but just really blow my mind. And again, it is a book that I don't know much about apart from that basic premise, but again, that is something that I really enjoy when it comes to books, historical fiction books in particular, and I really think I will enjoy this story, and I just again have very high hopes for it, and I think it will be a very good one. And that was it for some historical fiction books on my TBR right now, some historical fiction that I really want to read. I really do hope you enjoyed it, and for me, definitely making videos like these always make me so excited to actually read these books, which is something that I can definitely use. I mean, I feel like we all can use a little bit of a, you know, motivation when it comes to reading certain books. And for me, reading more historical fiction is just definitely something that I want to do, because I know how much I love the genre, and I know how many of my favorite books are historical fiction. And with all of the books on this list, I just think they are going to be amazing, and I cannot wait. Now that I'm talking about them, I cannot wait to pick them up. But for now, this was it for this video, and I really do hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, maybe go subscribe or give it a thumbs up or leave a comment. If you leave a comment, please let me know a historical fiction book that you would like to read, or a historical fiction book that you've read. And hopefully I will see you again very soon in one of my next videos. Bye!